Focus on Abilities is brought to you by Tier Memorial Hermann, redefining rehabilitation, removing barriers, re-enabling independence. In the ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Welcome to Focus on Abilities, a program about issues affecting the lives of people with disabilities. My name is Lex Frieden. I'll be your host for today's program. I'm professor at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston, and I work at the TIRR and the Texas Medical Center. We have an interesting program for you today, and we'll be back with our guests as soon as we have a break. But before I take a break, I want to ask you a question. What common household product is used by engineers to fix things from time to time? We'll be right back. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to Focus on Abilities. I'm Lex Frieden. We have two very interesting guests today, and I'm eager to introduce them to you. First, from Rice University, we have Michaela Dimoff. Michaela, welcome to Focus.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
And Christina Petlowany. Christina, you're at Rice as well.
Yes, thank you for having me here too.
Sure. Christina, where are you from?
I'm from Sacramento, California, thereabouts.
And how long have you been at Rice?
I'm a junior now, so a little over 2 years.
And you expect to finish after you're a senior?
Yeah.
You're studying engineering, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm a mechanical engineer.
And Michaela, you're from North Carolina?
Yeah, I'm from the very center of North Carolina, from a medium-sized city called Greensboro.
Greensboro. And you've been here also 2 years?
Yeah, about 2.5. I'm a junior as well.
So you'll graduate, both of you will graduate in 2016?
Mm-hmm. In May.
Looking forward to that already?
I don't know. I don't really want to leave Rice yet.
I don't want to leave either. It seems so close.
What is it about Rice that you like, Christina?
Oh, there's just so many things. I like the OEDK, the Oshman Engineering Design Kitchen. It's kind of where we work on projects for engineering. So I really love that. I also just love the community. It's a fairly small-sized school, but it's also big enough where you can still meet new people almost every day. So. Okay,
and yeah. Michaela, you share Christina's feeling for her love of Rice?
Completely. One of my really favorite things about Rice is that it's okay to be a nerd. So everybody who goes to Rice is a self-professed nerd, and the things that happen when you take the social stigma away from being smart are really cool, because when kids can get jazzed about building things like wheelchairs, then really cool things can happen and you can help a lot of people.
Let me ask you a question about that, though. You acknowledge that Rice is known for recruiting elite students. Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel like, though, I mean, you came from a smaller school, you were probably valedictorian of your high school class, do you ever feel like some of these other kids got a better education, or they have more snap, or even though you did well in this small pond, that in the bigger pool you're frustrated because they're kids smarter than you now, or how does that work?
Yeah, it definitely was a transition coming from somewhere where I was at the top of the class to Rice, where everyone was at the top of the class. But I think it was a transition that we pretty much all struggled through together. I don't think there were many people in our freshman class who didn't have to adjust to that transition. So we just all did it together, and we remember that even though Rice is hard, we're going to get out and we're going to have a lot of really great skills.
It's a good attitude. Christina, what was the size of your high school?
I had 135 students in my high school, and 35 school in my graduating class. Yeah. So it was very small.
Middle school. So you come to Rice with 2,000 or 3,000 students on the campus, and all of them really bright. Did you ever feel self-conscious or insignificant in that regard?
Definitely. I mean, it's hard going from where you've known everyone for a very long time and everything about them to going someplace where everywhere you look it's new people. I think we have a couple of things that help that though. We have the residential college system, which actually breaks students down into about groups of 300, so it's only a little bigger than my high school.
So the students that are living in the same residence hall all belong to a kind of community.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a lot like a co-ed, non-exclusive fraternity or sorority. So basically all the freshmen get put into one of these residential colleges right before they matriculate, and then you stay in that hall all 4 years. So instead of what you have at a school with fraternities and sororities where the freshman class is trying to impress the upperclassmen and get them to accept them into their clan, the upperclassmen in residential colleges at Rice are like, well, we're stuck with these incoming freshmen, so we want to make sure that they are as happy as possible so that they can contribute to the life of our college in a meaningful way.
Oh, that's interesting dynamic. Christina, coming from the small school where you were obviously excelled, you probably didn't have to study every day and you could still make good grades. Does that change when you go to Rice?
Well, I was very lucky to go to a high school that was pretty academically demanding. So that definitely prepared me for Rice because I was used to having to put into work to get the grades I wanted, which was nice because I was used to putting time aside to study. So the transition wasn't nearly so bad. I found the transition to the larger size school to actually be the most difficult part.
So you would advise kids who may be watching this show or parents who are coaching their children to make sure that in high school at least they're conditioning themselves to do work every day and try and, even if they don't have assignments to make, go off on their own and find things they want to learn about.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the habits you build during high school definitely stick with you into college. So the students who, could just not do homework and not really study for exams and still get straight A's, they definitely seem to struggle coming into school because they're used to not having to put into work, and then it's like, hey, I have to adapt and change. And a lot of students, I think, do change very well, but it's still kind of, like when you jump into cold water, it's a bit of a shock, I think.
Michaela, coming from a school in North Carolina that was probably pretty homogeneous, that you have a very culturally diverse school in Rice. Has that been interesting to you?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. So I went to a Catholic high school, so it was very, whatever the WASP version of Catholic is, that was what my high school was. So it was definitely really interesting coming to Rice where there's just, a myriad of people from different socioeconomic backgrounds and different races. And, we even have a 13% international student in our student body. But even though my high school was not very diverse, there was a very large emphasis in my education on social justice and being accepting of people of all races and ethnicities and creeds and abilities. So even though I didn't get to really put it in practice during high school, there were still a lot of adults in my life who modeled that behavior. We'll
talk more about this interest in diversity after we get back from a break. We're going to take a break now. Please stay tuned. We'll be back with more from Michaela and Christina on Focus on Abilities. Welcome back to Focus on Abilities. Today we're talking with some students from Rice University, and we'll be talking to them about an interesting project they were engaged in. But it's given us the opportunity to see a little bit of what goes on behind the green walls and the hedges at Rice. Michaela, thanks for being on the show, and Christina, you've given us some nice insights here. Both of you are engineering students. Is there anything particular that attracted you to Rice about engineering? I mean, is that the reason you applied to Rice, Michaela?
Yeah, so when I visited Rice, I went to an info session for the engineering department, And there were two things that really attracted me. The first was that the engineering session was hosted at what we call the design kitchen. So it's a space, it's basically like an overgrown garage with everything an engineer could need to build anything that they can dream up. And that's where our design classes are held. And as soon as I walked in the door, I knew that was where I wanted to spend the next 4 years of my life.
Christina, is that what attracted you to Rice?
Pretty much the same thing, yeah. I also really liked the campus, but the Oshman Engineering Design Kitchen was a big factor.
Well, now that's kind of weird because, I mean, the first time I heard about the design kitchen, I'm thinking about why are these engineering students learning to cook? I mean, is there anything about a kitchen per se that relates to this place? Because I've seen it before and it looks almost like a design lab. That's what I would call it.
It used to be a servery, so it actually used to be a kitchen.
Oh,
and
okay.
well, that was where the food for students came from. I think they kept the kitchen as kind of an homage to that, and also the idea that you'll like cook up cool engineering design while you're there.
Okay. Michaela, do you spend a lot of time in the kitchen?
Yes, I do spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I think I did the math the other day, and I think Christina and I have about total put in probably 2,000 hours on this project.
So the project is, we have a wheelchair here,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys work in teams, I understand it, in design at Rice, and make these projects. The teams work together. So you have students with different particular skills or particular specialty interests. Christina, you told me yours is mechanical engineering, and I know, Michaela, you're biomedical engineering. So you guys put yourselves together in a team and then choose a project to work on?
Yeah, so basically what happens is when you sign up for a design class, you take a survey that asks for what your skills are, and then the teachers or the moderators of the design class will collect all of that information and put people in teams. And then they will assign to those teams a project that was actually driven by a need that's present in the Houston community or the greater world community.
So the faculty becomes aware of a certain project. Maybe it's volunteered, like we've done this at TIER sometimes, send an idea over to Rice, and, and some students have chosen to work on that idea. So you all form a team and then start on a project. The wheelchair is the product of one of your projects. I want to know what caused you to work on it, but first I'm just curious about how it works. I want to show people what this wheelchair does, and it's curious because it doesn't have the typical armrests a wheelchair would have. Instead, it has levers. Christina, can you show us what these levers do on this chair?
Sure thing. So if you want to drive the wheelchair, it's driven using a rowing motion. So what you do is you switch the wheelchair into forward, which is just the paddles going outwards, and then you slide your hands in and you can push the wheelchair forward. And then to go in reverse, you can switch it inwards and pull it backwards.
So instead of pushing the wheelchair with your hands on the rims or using power motors, this uses a different function of the body, really. I mean, it's a rowing motion rather than a pushing motion. Michaela, the chair also has specially designed brakes. I'd see that work not with the hands but with the legs.
Yes, so we took standard bicycle grip brakes and we inverted their direction and put them down by the user's knees. So basically what someone does to engage them is they flare their knees outward, which compresses this lever, and then we just have a normal bicycle brake cable that runs up to a bicycle caliper brake that squeezes the tire and provides friction that brakes the wheelchair. And this is helpful for people who don't have the fine motor control in their hands to grip that hard, but who can abduct their knees.
So basically this is an ordinary wheelchair that you've adapted.
Exactly.
Why did you do that, Michaela?
So Christina and I had an internship at the Engineering Design Kitchen the summer after our freshman years. And our job there was to take projects that had been started by various groups of Rice students and finish them. We were given this project, which was building a wheelchair for a boy who was at that time 14, named Pedro, who has a condition where he can't retract his arms or grip anything.
So Pedro couldn't push an ordinary wheelchair
Exactly.
because he couldn't grip the side arms, and he couldn't move his shoulders and elbows in the configuration one would have to do in order to push an ordinary wheelchair, right?
Exactly. So he could push out, but then once he gets here, he's stuck. So
he has like triceps and no biceps.
Exactly. And he also has a pretty strong abdominal muscles and pectoral muscles, but no triceps. No biceps. And basically, this project had been going on since spring of 2011, when it had originally been given to a team of Rice freshmen. We were given the project and basically told that if we were unable to show by the end of the summer that it could be successfully completed by undergraduates, then the project would die, and Pedro would be told that he was never going to get a wheelchair.
Oh my goodness.
And Christina and I, at the time, were actually living together because we had been friends freshman year. And I very vividly remember we had this really awful day at work where everything was just going wrong, and then we were sitting on my bed probably 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and we decided that we were just going to go into work tomorrow, and no matter how hard it was, we were going to do everything we could from that day forward to get Pedro a wheelchair because we didn't want to let him down.
So do you remember what day that was?
It was the 4th week of our internship. It was sometime in the middle of June 2013.
So you had this epiphany and this overwhelming commitment just came over you guys, and you decided this is what we want to do for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michaela and I both really like to finish things. We were actually on the same freshman design project, so we've worked together for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about actually how you did it with your team members, and now that Pedro's 17 years old, what he thinks about the wheelchair. We'll come right back. I want you all, please stay tuned. We'll hear more about the Rice wheelchair right after this break. We'll be back. Stay tuned. You're watching Focus on Abilities on HTV HD. I'm Lex Frieden, and we're here today with Michaela and Christina. We're talking about this wheelchair that students at Rice University built for Pedro. When Pedro first had the need for the wheelchair, he realized that he needed some kind of adaptations, and a therapist, maybe one of his family members, joined together and sent a proposal to Rice, and students worked on that for a couple of years until you all decided this really needs to be done. It needs to be done right, and we're going to do it by darn before we graduate, right?
Yep.
And at that point, I guess Pedro was kind of glad to hear somebody was taking a new interest in it, since he'd been waiting to see the product. You put together this chair, but a version of it, an early version, and showed it to him. What was his reaction?
So our first prototype of the chair actually didn't really look anything like this, and it didn't work nearly as well. So its maximum speed was about a 45-minute mile. So it was really slow. It couldn't go in reverse. It couldn't turn. So while Pedro was excited about our obvious interest in carrying the project through, he definitely had some trepidation because the chair obviously didn't work. And, he didn't really know us, and he had only really seen, Rice students come in and out of his life. But over time, we showed him, no, we're really not giving up on you. We're really, we would bring things to him to test that were, made of styrofoam and taped together with duct tape, and that didn't look anything like any of the nice pads you see on the chair right now. But over time, we showed him, no, we're actually not going to just give you this duct tape piece of styrofoam thing. Like, we're actually going to make it nice.
And I guess his only other option was to have one of his family members push his chair, and that's the way he got around. Mm-hmm. Once the chair actually got to the point where he could move it at a reasonable rate, did he want to let you have it back to work on it more?
It got harder and harder to take it away from him every time. I remember the day that we were almost done with the chair, and we wanted to make sure that it fit in their car and that both his mom and his dad could pick it up and put it in the car, because we've added a little bit of weight. And it went into their trunk, and they closed the trunk, and it was just absolutely gut-wrenching to have to say, like, I'm really sorry, I need to take this back and get it approved as safe. Have some people, including yourself, look at it.
So, Christina, when Pedro tests the chair, does he do it in his home environment, in his school environment, or does he come to Rice?
We actually go to Shriners Hospital. The project was brought to Rice by Dr. Gloria Gogola there, and she's actually brought a couple of projects to the OEDK. So we test at Shriners, which is nice because they have things like ramps and long hallways that we can use for testing.
And I guess you've showed us the way the chair moves forward. It's just bungee cords that helps him to pull the arms back, and it does have some pretty sophisticated hubs. I've noticed there's kind of a lever action hub. Did you all manufacture those, or were they off the shelf?
No, so we purchased them from a company out in California, actually really close to where Christina lives, called Innovations Health. And they manufactured this and then one other robotic arm product. And they've been so helpful throughout the entire design process. We told them what we were trying to do and explained to them that even though the OEDK is great, it doesn't have the resources to manufacture gear sets. And they actually were willing to give us these hubs for a wholesale price.
So that's probably a good example of technology transfer. What other things in the engineering design have you learned from this project, Christina?
So many different things. I guess also too is just that the number of iterations that it sometimes takes to just get a simple thing done. For example, like these push pads. They started off looking very, very different than the final one, and not at all like a finished product. And those have gone through probably 7 or 8 different iterations.
Just for the handheld?
Just for that piece, yeah. Hours and hours of work.
And what about customer-centered design? Is that a principle that you all practice or learn? Or?
Oh, totally. Everything that we design on this wheelchair is specifically tailored to what Pedro wants. So whenever we go to test something, like when we were testing the placement of this, we brought a vertical bar and a horizontal bar that was just riddled with holes, and we could move it, up, 12 inches or down 12 inches and left and right about 8 inches, and we tried probably 5 different combinations before Pedro found one that he wanted.
But when you all go into the work world, do you expect to design products that are made for one person, or do you expect to design products that are made for the general population?
Probably the latter.
Yeah.
And what good does it do for you to learn about individualized design then?
So you still, to some extent, have to make sure that you apply the same principles. So when you're designing for a large population, you look at the standard deviation of that population. So you say, I want to design this for people who are 5th percentile females up to 95th percentile males.
Okay,
and then
you scope it, and this one just happens to be narrowly scoped, right?
Exactly.
But I mean, I can see some possibilities of transferring this technology to a larger population of people with who use wheelchairs. So I guess it's a process altogether. Well, I really appreciate you all bringing the chair down here. And on behalf of Pedro and his family, thanks so much for working on it. This has got to be really rewarding for him to have spent this amount of time and have something that he can use to be out with the other kids and be more independent than he would have been otherwise. It's wonderful. Christina, I appreciate everything you've done here and also the hard work that you're doing at Rice, and good luck in the future.
Thank you.
And Michaela, same to you.
Thank you.
It's been a work of love, I know that. But you probably have another project waiting when this one's finished, right?
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what it is yet. I will be studying abroad in Dublin, Ireland next semester, and I'm taking a design class there.
Okay.
So I'll be doing something related to design in a completely different culture.
Okay, you'll be here, Christina?
Yep.
Okay. Well, good luck in the kitchen, and good luck in Ireland.
Thank you.
Thank you all again for being our guest today on Focus on Abilities. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back with some closing comments. We appreciate you watching Focus on Abilities today. I'm your host, Lex Frieden, and we've had Michaela and Christina here from Rice University. It's interesting to see how our universities in the Houston area serve people with disabilities through student projects like those from the Rice Design Kitchen. Pedro, the young man who will have the benefit of the wheelchair we looked at today, is probably very, very happy. But in the course of designing the wheelchair for Pedro, these students have learned a lot about disability and a lot about the needs of people with disabilities and a lot about how they in their future can help people with disabilities to be more independent. Focus on Abilities is a program of HTV, and we're proud to be able to put these shows on the air for you so that you can learn about resources in our community. I really do appreciate you watching, and I appreciate everybody down here putting the show together for us. Next time, we'll have a great program for you, but before we close the show today, I want to answer the question that we asked at the beginning of this show. What household product is often used by engineers to make things work? Duct tape. Thanks for watching. Please tune in next time to Focus on Abilities.
Focus on Abilities is brought to you by Tier Memorial Herman, redefining rehabilitation, removing barriers, re-enabling independence. In the ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.